Incorporating wovens into your space is a really great way to add texture, especially if you have an overall pretty neutral palette. But because it's so trendy right now, it's often quite expensive. So one material I like to use from the Dollar Tree are these woven boxes. Now these are fine as boxes, but there are definitely things that you can make with this material that I think can be a little bit more functional because these are quite small. Just remove the clasp piece as well as just peel back on that woven material from the wood pieces that create the shape of a box. Now you can find lamps to cover anywhere, but I personally love the thrift store because you can find lamps super inexpensively, especially if you're gonna have to change it anyhow. So this lamp was just $2 at my Goodwill, and all we're gonna do with this lamp here is just wrap the entire thing with this woven material. For the shade, I decided I wanted to make a pleated lampshade. So in order to do that, I just went in sections. Folding the material onto itself and then cinching it at the top will create these nice pleats that we will then place all around this white lampshade. In order to keep these pleats in place, you could do one of two things. The first option would be to sew it in place. However, I opted to just use some super glue gel, also from the Dollar Tree, just to make sure that everything did stay nice and in place and wouldn't be as visible as something like hot glue might be. I did use hot glue to attach my sections onto the actual lampshade, making sure that everything is nice and even throughout. Now, if all you need is a shade and you like your base of your lamp, you can stop here. But because this is really not my style, this bright hot pink, I did just decide to spray paint it with just some spray paint that I had on hand, just in case you would be able to see that pink poking through. I wanted it to be more neutralized, so I will link the spray paint that I use in the description box below. After the sealer then dried, I then just took the tape off so I could apply that final piece of material to the base. In order to do that, I just used the wood glue from the Dollar Tree and it worked perfectly, stayed nice and in place, and also dries clear. I ended up using 4.5 of these little woven boxes to create this lamp. Even at affordable retailers like Target, something like this would cost much more. So if you're able to shop at the Dollar Tree, maybe use some of that material in an unexpected way, you can create a super similar look on a budget. Another idea in this category is to just make a large scale shade. So I've been loving these glass lamps with just either a linen shade, but I really love it if it does have a woven shade. At the thrift store, I found this really beautiful glass lamp base. Unfortunately, it did not have a shade, which would have made this project go by so much quicker, but because it didn't, I decided I needed to make a custom woven shade for this lamp base. For the hoop base, you could use anything. I just had this in my stash. It's just a wooden wreath base. This one particularly is 12 inches, and I'm just going to start off by, again, taking the wood glue from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to clip sections of the boxes into place so that way everything is lining up really well. I ended up using 3.5 of these boxes, which worked out perfectly because I had just enough left over from the first project. In order to make this a functional lampshade, I needed to take a fitter because that is the type of shade I would need for that glass base. So I just found this one in my stash, cut it down to size using my needle nose pliers. But before I attach anything together, I still felt that it just didn't look super finished. And also in my stash, I believe I picked this up at the Goodwill bins. It's just some finishing trim that you can put on exposed wood sections or particle board sections that you don't want to see. It just gives a more finished look. So I thought that maybe just wrapping this around both the top and the bottom would give it an overall more finished appearance. Because I only had one of those wooden wreath bases, I just decided to sew these into place so that way it looked nice and seamless, and when everything is covered with that finishing trim, it will just look like everything was connected in one solid piece. Secured everything together with wood glue, and then all that was left to do is then now just attach that spider fitter to the base of this shade. I also decided to stain everything just the same color so it just created a more unified appearance. Because I already had so many of the supplies on hand, this shade really only cost $5, and I think it looks great with this glass base. And the same really goes for the thrift store. Now, sometimes you can get lucky and find a piece that is really great quality, just could benefit from a really deep clean and disinfectant, this woven tray at places like Pottery Barn would be a small fortune. However, more often than not, you do find a lot of woven material, especially that is damaged in some way. Either the handles are broken or something has snapped off, but that provides you an opportunity. Like this little box was broken, but that's a lot of really great seagrass material that you can then repurpose and turn into something else. I love these really beautiful round pin boards from Pottery Barn, from McGee & Co., but they're super expensive. And the ones from Dollar Tree are they're just a little bit sad, and they're a little bit small, but they're also only $1.25. But we can take other Dollar Tree things like this hula hoop and some poster board from the Dollar Tree to create a more large scale pin board. Starting off with our hula hoop, first things first, we have to remove that metallic sticker. It's really easy to do. Once you just start to get one of those pieces off, you can pretty much just pull back on the whole thing in order for us to get a clean finish when we apply our woven material. So in order to apply this, I'm just wrapping it around, never cutting it, just applying it with some hot glue, wrapping it about every 3 to 4 sections before adding any additional glue. Once the entire hoop form is covered, it's just time now to add our fabric onto the poster board. So I had this flax fabric left over again in my stash that I thrifted for $1, just traced around and then took an X-Acto knife and removed the section that I would need for our poster board. Before attaching the fabric, I did just press it with an iron so there were no wrinkles. Now to attach the fabric onto the poster board, I personally just like to use a spray adhesive. This is just a really forgiving medium, so if you mess up, if there's a wrinkle or a bubble, you can just simply peel back on it and then really press it into place when you're happy with how it's laying. Last minute decision I made, I found this piece in my stash and I thought it might be a little bit more interesting if it was hanging from the wall from this rod here. So I did temporarily separate the hoop in order to make sure that that was going to fit inside that piece that we added. All that was left to do was just remove any of the excess fabric and then screw that bracket into place. Now let's talk about the scrap wood. So if you're comparing how much wood could you get at Lowe's versus Dollar Tree, you're going to get a better price per unit at Lowe's. But oftentimes you don't need as much as you're buying. I have so much wood left over, generally speaking, so it's nice when you just want to make small little projects and still save, because boxes like this at Michael's are going to be 2 to 3 to 4 times the price than they are at Dollar Tree. A piece I really love from Magnolia is this wood wall shelf and rail, but it's almost $200, and that's just bananas. So we can make something similar, smaller, but similar, for a lot less, just using Dollar Tree things. So just grab 4 of these wood boxes from the Dollar Tree. Also from the tools section, grab the wood glue there. It's just more affordable. You don't need to use the Gorilla Glue. It works exactly the same. Just placing it on the bottom half to connect all of the boxes together. You could use clamps here, but I found that it was honestly sticking really well without them, so I just made sure that they were as straight as possible. I loved the little labels on all of the boxes from Magnolia, so I'm just going to take the ones from these frames here and just attach them. I know that Dollar Tree in the past has had boxes with these labels almost exactly like this, but I didn't find those boxes at my store, but if you do, that would be another good option. I also grabbed these wall hooks here. I liked that J hook, and then also for a means to hang our wall shelf, I just grabbed that hanging component from this as well. Now it's just time for paint or stain. I like to use this antiquing wax. I like to apply my wax generally with a foam brush that I also pick up at the Dollar Tree. Ended up just doing 1 coat until everything was completely covered, and then let that sit to dry. Once it dried, then I just wanted to add those brackets that we took from the picture frames. You could be really technical with this. I just eyeballed it, tried to make them as centered and leveled as possible. On the back then, I just took that hanger component, added that as well as the J hook so we could slide a dowel through. For the dowel, I just grabbed this 2-pack from the Dollar Tree, still just $1.25. We're just going to use one of them to complete this project. Again, using that same antiquing wax with a foam brush. let that dry, and then it's just time now to slide it into place. Now, of course, it's not identical, but for just about $10, I think if you have a small space that you're trying to work on, projects like these are really great and you don't need to spend a fortune. Because that dowel pack had 2 in it, for the other one, we can just take this eyeglass pouch that is leather, and we are just going to cut sections off so that we can slide that dowel through it. To secure it to the wall, I just used push pins from the Dollar Tree. Again, just $1.25. Something really similar from Amazon is going to cost way more. So try to find those areas that you can save without sacrificing style. Another trim piece that I found in that stash was this piece here. It was a 6-foot board, literally never used, in perfect condition, and I loved that it had almost like a beveled edge. So I thought this would make some perfect little wooden wall sconces. So just, again, taking some measurements, taking my miter saw, cutting it down, sanded down any rough edges, and I'm just going to use that same wax that I used in the previous project, just wiping off any excess so it's a little bit lighter in tone and you can see more of that wood grain. For the candle component, I just have these caps that I found at the bins a long time ago, just spray painted them with some brass spray paint, popped some candles in that I already had. Now, I love a sconce all year round, but especially for fall, it's nice to add that ambient lighting on a budget. Another tried and true favorite that will always make my list is the hurricane vase. And I really like the scale of this one from the plus section even better. Of course, you can use the normal one, that's $1.25. But another idea is to turn these taller ones into taper candle holders. I'm just going to spray paint these plastic pieces with some brass spray paint first and then go in again with a dusting of black. I think it just kind of calms down the brass and makes it feel a little bit more high end. Attaching these plastic pieces with some Gorilla Glue that is designed to stick to glass. You just want to make sure whatever adhesive you're using, you can't use hot glue here, it'll peel right off. So you want to use an adhesive that is appropriate for the materials you're working with. Next, I'm just going to spray a little bit of spray paint into a cup. Make sure your windows are open, you're wearing a mask, and I'm just going to line the rim of each of these taller hurricane vases. And I think they look beautiful. You don't need to spend a fortune to have a space that you love. So my thought for this is I have been really loving these book stands, but every single one that I find is so crazy expensive. My thought was, what if we could just take those bamboo pieces and turn this into a book stand? You could also do this if you have 2 identical pieces of scrap wood, but this is just a really easy option. The only thing I really did was just measure the depth of these bamboo boards, and I made a marking of where I thought it should go in order for it to still be symmetrical. So the first time I did it, I didn't like how much wood was still on the one that we cut, so I did decide to deepen it a little bit so that way it just created a more seamless look. Before connecting the pieces together, it's just easier to paint or stain when things are separated. So I just separated them temporarily. I first went in with the wax, but despite sanding these bamboo boards down, it just created a haziness on the boards. So I decided then to do a color wash of some grayish paint mixed with water, and then I took a bristle brush, also from the Dollar Tree, just to create a grain-like look. If you're on a budget, this is a really easy project to give a try, and you can save a significant amount of money. Whether you love them or hate them, I think that pleated table lamps and pleated shades just in general are really having a resurgence in the interior design world. Starting off with the shade, based on the size of this specific shade, I needed to grab 2 packs of the craft fabric from the Dollar Tree. You could definitely choose a fabric that is more heavily patterned, but just keep in mind when you're adding the pleats, you want everything to line up really well. So going with something a little bit more simple, especially if this is your first time doing it, is always a good place to start. Started off by just pressing the fabric with an iron, and you'll want to keep that iron handy so that way when you go to cut your new pieces of fabric and apply them, you can add those creases and it can all just be really seamless. Started off by cutting each piece of fabric that you get from the Dollar Tree just right down the middle in half, so that way I was able to double my fabric and not waste anything. When it comes to how to cut your strips of fabric, if you are working with this style of a lampshade that's slightly tapered at the top, you also want to make sure that you're tapering your fabric as well, because otherwise if you just cut them straight, which would be perfect for a drum shade, you're going to have too much fabric that won't have a place to go on the top rim of your shade. So you want to just ever so slightly angle them so that everything lines up nice and straight. Once you've cut out all of your pieces of fabric, then now comes time to again iron them in place. So just fold the fabric in half and then just press it with an iron. It doesn't matter that the edges aren't covered, because as you continue to apply the pieces of fabric, the other side will end up covering the unfinished side, so you won't be able to see it. When it comes to glue, I always believe less is more, so just a small dab of glue on the bottom to secure it in place, as well as the top, and then you can just remove the excess. Just continued applying those strips of fabric exactly in that way, and then once I basically got back to the place that I started, I just tried to make it look as seamless as possible and just tuck in that unfinished side underneath of the first strip that I laid down. With our pleated shade complete, now it's just time to work on our base. I've had this thrifted wall sconce sitting in my stash for a while, and it was just basically the perfect fit for our DIY pleated lampshade here. I'm going to use these light bulbs, so nothing is hardwired, although it looks like it is. Because I already had the light bulb, this project only cost me about $5, and I think it's the perfect addition to my kitchen space. When I went to West Elm, one stool that I really loved was this woven stool with this beautiful dark chocolatey brown wood. So we're gonna try to create something similar using primarily Dollar Tree items. So initially these were just $1.25 as I'm showing here, but now they are $1.50. As you can see, that red sticker should be an indication to you that the price has increased. Taking two of these because they will be our seat portion. Now, of course, no one is actually going to sit on the stool. This bamboo is still pretty thin, so I wouldn't recommend it for an actual like seating situation, but for decorative purposes, I think it's perfect. So grab two of these, connected them with wood glue, and then temporarily connected them at the back. So let's talk about how to source DIY materials. So just kind of like the acorn basket, I didn't leave it just as that little bowl. I made it into something I wanted for fall. So just like that, at the Goodwill bins, take the material from something. I have no use for a basket like this, but I love that it is seagrass and I can make this seagrass material into something else. So just unravel the seagrass material from maybe a piece you were gonna donate because your basket's broken, or from whatever piece you find at the bins. Just unravel it and then soak it in some warm water just to loosen how it was originally shaped. And then now you can turn it into whatever pattern you want. So I personally love a checker printed pattern. It just adds, again, a little bit more visual interest. And I like to do it off to the side and then shape it because I think it's just a little bit easier. It's too chaotic when you're trying to work on too many things at the same time. So I do it off to the side and then I apply it to the top of this piece here. So in order to secure these seagrass pieces down, I used my electric staple gun, and I'm just going to staple all of the pieces down, and then just once they have been secured down, I'm going to remove any excess. And I know no one's going to really see the bottom, but just to give it a more finished look, I did decide to cut some trim pieces down in my stash to secure the seagrass pieces down as well, give it a more finished look, and then that way I can remove the excess staples that you really don't need now that I've placed this wood piece here. So to attach it, I just pre-drill a small hole that's going to connect that wood piece to the bamboo board, and then just go ahead and screw that in place. You just don't want to go right in with the screw because you have a chance that you could snap that bamboo board. For the legs, super random, just grabbed some plunger sticks from the Dollar Tree, $1.50. Took my miter saw, cut it down to the appropriate size that I was really looking for. This is totally customizable. You could make this the full size or shorter if you'd like. And then once I got the height down, I just wanted to slightly angle them. So I changed my degree to just 5 degrees, just slight angle. Gave it a sand just to remove any sticker residue and make everything look really finished. connect it at first with wood glue, and then I'm gonna take my nail gun and secure it in place. As I mentioned, I love that beautiful chocolatey brown color, so I just went in with my antiquing wax and I did 2 coats to get that nice, rich color that I was really trying to achieve. My goal with projects like these is to show you guys other ways that you can use those typical Dollar Tree pieces. Like, it's really amazing what you can make with dowels from plungers and cutting boards from the kitchen section. You can create really timeless pieces for your space if you're on a budget. I love the look of vintage bells, but not just for Christmas. Like, I love these from Shop Amber Interiors. I love a vintage cowbell that you'll see at antique stores, but often they're very expensive. I came across these bells at the Dollar Tree and I've never seen them before, so of course I had to stock up. And all we're gonna do with these is just distress them. There are so many ways you can distress metal pieces from the Dollar Tree using simple acrylic paints. I've also seen them drop recently metallic paints. I just used paints that I already had, but to apply the paint, I did pick up a few makeup brushes from the Dollar Tree just because I think, especially when you use any oil-based paints like Rub and Buff has a somewhat oily consistency, using makeup brushes just gives you a better end result. Once you're happy with the level of distressing, you can tie jute rope to these, or I'm going to be placing them on these shepherd hooks that I picked up I think a few years ago now from the Target dollar spot, but something still just felt off with these. So I did go back in, decide to remove that center piece of each of the bells and add just some scrap wood that I distressed and then stained with some antiquing wax and just hot glued it to the original hanger just to give it, again, that more primitive look. Let's talk about home decor. So I'm pretty much just going to focus on items that are new because we know the same old, right? So one new thing that I found was this jug vase here, still just at that $125 price point, which I think is very fair. You can find things that look just like this at Target with faux florals for $25, but we can make that ourselves for a whole lot less. The shape of this little vase here is very reminiscent of things that you can find at high-end stores, but a miniature size. So taking some tan paint and just mixing it again with a little bit of baking soda, applying that with a foam brush. I ended up doing 3 coats total just to completely cover it. Now, if you like this vase as it is, great. You don't need to do anything to it. But I love a rustic or vintage look in my space, so I'm then just going to add a little bit of gray paint watered down, apply it with a wet paper towel to again get that weathered, aged look. While of course it's not a fair fight because I'm sure the one from Pottery Barn is huge, but I think there are times where you want little pieces like this to just add a little bit of life to a space that could use it. The next new piece that I found was this angled glass vase here. I liked the scale. This is a dead ringer for something you would find at Crate & Barrel, and it would not be for $1.25. So the first Dollar Tree I went to was charging $3 for this guy though. But when I went to the second one, it was only $1.25. So of course I made sure to stock up. I bought 3 of them. You don't need to do anything to this. This could just look beautiful. Get some flowers from your garden or clippings from a neighbor. Because I used hydrangeas in that glass vase, a nice pairing is a mister, but you don't have to spend $13 at Target. You can spend $1.25 at the Dollar Tree. Going to Pottery Barn is like going to lantern heaven. You can find every shape, style of lantern at Pottery Barn. So these lanterns here are just $5 for the largest size and $3 for the smaller one. So I grabbed a few of these. Now let's talk about some ways that you can use them. So obviously the most common way is to just stick some sort of a candle in here. It could be flameless, or you could even use a real candle. A couple things I want to point out. Of course, there is no glass, but I like that it's actually metal, not plastic made to look like metal. The most common way I'm sure people will use these is to just add a candle, maybe add some fairy lights for that added glow. Because there isn't any glass to hold the fairy lights in, I would just take a little bit of black electrical electrical tape and stabilize those in place. But how I personally thought about using these, really loved those wall lanterns from Pottery Barn for $2.49. That's just not in my budget for one lantern. So I find these all the time in the Christmas section at my thrift store. So I'm just gonna grab one of these and I'm gonna place it inside of here. The only thing I really wanted to do to this piece was just to spray paint it all black, just to make it look like the one from Pottery Barn. The base piece that I end up using, because the piece that it comes with is just a little bit too tall, was just something I had in my stash. So I would just go to Lowe's and buy these little plastic caps that you can put in, so then that way it stays nice and secure. All that's left to do now is just secure it in place. You could do E6000, super glue gel, just use something, especially if it is going to be outside, that can weather the storm. Of course, it's not identical, but for just about $6.50, I think it's pretty close. Now let's talk about where things can get really expensive, which is all of the primitive wood pieces. From benches to any wall decor, these things can add up really quickly. Now, of course, you're not gonna find a beautiful primitive bench or riser at the Dollar Tree, but you will find these bamboo boards, which have now increased to $1.50 a piece. Now, I know this look isn't for everybody, but if you have a new build or if you have a lot of modern pieces in your space, it's so important to add pieces like this to give your space that character that it so desperately needs. So for this project, I grabbed 2 of the wood cutting boards from the Dollar Tree, as well as 2 scrap pieces of wood also from the Dollar Tree, so we're all in at $6. To start, I'm just going to attach both of the bamboo boards together with some wood glue, just pressing one on top of the other and clamping it in place. And despite it being a new, larger size, it's still pretty small. So I don't think I can really make a stool from the Dollar Tree, but maybe we can make a little primitive riser. Just took some quick measurements. Just want to keep in mind how big the top of our riser is going to be, just making sure that the legs aren't unusually too long or too short. Placed them about where I thought they should go, just traced that around so that way we will create the opening on both pieces of bamboo board, so that way the legs can show through from the top, because that is a very common thing that you will see, is that the legs of these benches or stools are actually visible from the top of the piece. So in order to create those openings, you could use anything, but I just chose to start with a drill that was a slightly larger size, so that way I could create bigger openings, so then I could take different tools to really carve out those sections for our legs to slide in through the bottom and be visible from the top. The key with creating this look is actually not to have it be super perfect and lined up, because if, again, you look at those pieces, there's a lot of imperfections, a lot of weathering to those pieces. So obviously there has to be some semblance of normalcy, but you want it to just feel really weathered and really aged. And I just did that with things that I have at my house, like flathead screwdrivers, a fork. I just used whatever I had on hand to really create those deep carvings that you'll see in really truly primitive pieces. I did that all throughout the top and the sides of the bamboo boards, as well as on the legs. Before assembling the riser together, I first just went in with some antiquing wax on a damp paper towel, primarily all around the sides and perimeter of the top of what will be our riser. Making sure to really press that wax in where the legs will be coming through, as well as just all around the sides, getting in those deep nooks and crannies will just overall add to the look we're trying to achieve. The first coat was with everything separate, then I assembled the stool together, and then again did the same thing, just focusing that darker color on the outside and the lightest color on the inside. Again, a totally buildable project. You could do a lot more distressing than I did, or way less, completely up to you, but pieces that look just like this at antique stores cost a small fortune. So if you're working with a Dollar Tree budget, you can still achieve the look for a lot less. Another but more refined project I wanted to include in this video is to make some sort of a wall cabinet, a wall shelf. Whenever I'm thrifting, I tend to see a lot of wooden wall display shelves and cabinets. And we can definitely come up with something similar, smaller again, but similar for a lot less. So supplies. Most recently, I found these wooden wall shelves at the Dollar Tree with these brackets, as well as these canvases that are a 12 by 12, so I grabbed 2 of those. Taking 2 of those wooden shelves that I found from the Dollar Tree, removing the brackets, and we're going to attach these wood pieces onto these frames here. So for the front, just want to make sure the staples are facing the back, and then we're going to place one of the wooden wall shelves directly behind it, and we're just going to attach those first with some wood glue. For the other wooden frame, exact same thing, just make sure the staples are facing the back, and then just flip the shelf upside down because that will now be the top before we connect all 4 pieces together. So basically we made something like a cube, and you could stop here if you're happy with this, just stain it and call it a day, but I wanted to give it a little bit more visual interest. I remember several years ago, Lone Fox did a beautiful IKEA project. I believe it was with the Billy bookcase, and he used pull wrap. So for the arch shape, I ended up grabbing 2 more of those shelves, and we're just going to create those arches as well, just adding a nail to the middle and tracing around to get that perfect arch shape. I just chose to use these because I knew they would be the same depth, and then to cut them out, I just used this jigsaw here, just following along that line as best as possible. If there were any imperfections, I then just sanded it down so everything was nice and flush. With all of our half circle pieces then cut out, it's just time now to add the wood glue so we can attach it to both the top and the bottom of our cube-like shelf. For little small projects like these, wood glue honestly does do the job. I just felt that I wanted to give it a little bit more support, so I just grabbed some scrap trim from my stash, attaching those pieces to both the top and the bottom, so then that way everything just has a nice solid hold because the material that we're going to be wrapping around the shelves is on the heavier side. As I mentioned earlier, I believe Lone Fox used a material called pull wrap, and for the project that he did, because it was a big and entire bookcase, he needed all of that material. But for little projects like these, you can get away with something like the top of a roll top desk or a bread box. I see these all the time at the thrift stores, and they're usually just a few dollars, and they make just the perfect additional detail to very basic wood pieces. So I just cut that material down to the appropriate size and wrapped it around both of the arches that we created, again with wood glue. Once I was happy with the positioning of that material, I then just taped it in place until the wood glue cured. Once everything was solidified and in place, I then just went over the entire thing just to unify everything with an acrylic paint called Territorial Beige. And then again, just wanting to give it a more aged look and give a more detail in the wood grain, went over that with some antiquing wax. I will link all of the supplies for all of the projects in the description box below if you are interested. The last thing I needed to figure out was how to hang this from the wall. So I just grabbed a picture that I wasn't actively using, grabbed the D-rings from that picture and applied it to this wall display shelf instead. Totally optional, but one small detail I did want to add was a rod to the bottom to be able to hang things from it. So from the Dollar Tree, I grabbed 2 of these wooden dowels. I'm just going to stain one of them with some antiquing wax. And then for this rod, I just ended up using old cabinet hardware. Just separated it from the wooden dowel that was the handle, and we're just going to then now screw those pieces into the bottom of the cabinet, and then now just slide our Dollar Tree dowel through those. Now, of course, it's not perfect, but for well under $15, I was able to create a piece of decor that can add a little bit of functionality, give me a little bit more space, but definitely on a budget. Which brings me now to wall decor, one of the most expensive categories on McGee & Co., Magnolia, Pottery Barn. And while I know, of course, yes, you can go to Target or Home Goods or Hobby Lobby and get a vintage inspired artwork piece, but so can everyone else. So that, to me, is not curation. So if you're like me and you like your things to be one of a kind and specific to you, it can be really helpful for you to make some of these pieces yourself, and it definitely doesn't have to cost a fortune. So even if you buy this Dollar Tree frame that maybe a lot of other people have as well, you can make it completely custom to your space by just doing a few of these tricks. While this Dollar Tree frame in shape is pretty good, I don't like its color. So again, I did the same application that I did for both of the bells, just applied it to this frame as well. It just gives it a more authentic brass look. Once the frame dries, it's time now just to decide on some artwork. So because this frame does not come with glass, I have found one hack is to just take canvas from any cheap canvas that you find at the Goodwill bins or at the Dollar Tree and just cut that down to your paper size. And then I personally just like to use Etsy. I try to support small businesses when I can. These downloads are right to your email, are super affordable. I think this one specifically I paid $1.49 for. And then now that I've printed it on an actual canvas paper, it looks so much more realistic instead of going to Walgreens and having it printed on your typical photo paper. Just added some spray adhesive to some cardboard and placed it inside of the frame. One of the new pieces through Magnolia was this really beautiful rail picture frame that I hadn't seen before yet. So I figured we could try to dupe something similar using some Dollar Tree material. So I found this picture for $1.25 from the Dollar Tree. You could just choose to use this frame, but I thrifted a frame for 50 cents that I liked more. So I'm going to use that one instead. So I'm just going to remove the photo from this frame here, and I can always save the frame, use it for something else, just cut it down to size and attach these two pieces together. Now for the rail part to hang the picture, I went to the Crafter Square section and I found some jewelry making kits as well as these dowels here. In order for this picture to hang from the dowel, I needed to drill small holes on either side of the top of the frame, so that way our jewelry pieces would be able to hang and connect them together. To make it feel a little more finished, I'm just going to stain this dowel using some antiquing wax that I already had on hand. Placed two of the earring pieces on the inside as well as the back, so that way these would be the hooks that would connect to the chain, which would connect to the other hook connected to the dowel. Now to hang it up on the wall, I just used some C hooks, so that way the dowel would just sit inside of those C hooks. While I still obviously like the one from Magnolia much more, for $5 I think I get an overall similar look, but on a much tighter budget. Another really easy, inexpensive hack to make some of these little small pictures look bigger, just grab two white poster boards from the Dollar Tree for $1, and then you can just do this to a frame that you already have or a thrifted frame, so that way your artwork is going to appear that it actually is a larger piece, but your artwork from the Dollar Tree is still quite small. And you can just place that opening for your Dollar Tree photo in the middle, or one thing I've noticed designers doing a lot more is to actually make it purposefully off-center for a more kind of dynamic effect. For styling, you can of course just pop it on any wall or also lean it on any bookshelf as long as the scale is appropriate, but it truly doesn't have to break the bank. I spent less than $10 for both pieces of artwork, and I think it fills out this little corner beautifully. Moving along now to decorative objects. I think this category for some reason in decor isn't received well because it's not functional or practical, but for me personally, when I'm styling my shelves, it gets so monotonous with the exact same category of things: vases, boxes, books. You get the idea. So when you have these pieces that are just kind of these one-off, unique pieces, it adds again. And I've noticed lately Dollar Tree, it's trying its hardest to really give us those pieces that mimic things that you'll see from high-end stores. But I think for me, the only thing I would truly purchase that I know I can flip into something that looks a little bit more high-end is the magnifying glass. So grabbing one magnifying glass from the Dollar Tree. Now for the base, for it to be a standing magnifying glass, I'm just going to use the base of an old trophy. We're going to combine these two pieces together. So in order to do that, I just needed to grab a small piece out of a wood dowel, also from the Dollar Tree, drill a small hole into the bottom of the magnifying glass. We're just going to connect everything together with one screw. Just making sure that everything is nice and solid. I wouldn't glue this. I think that if you want it to be a lasting piece of decor, And this way you can really shape it and get it to be nice and sturdy and straight, just manipulating it a little bit. Now you could paint this brass to give it a more vintage inspired feel, but I've already painted so many other pieces in brass. I just wanted to leave this black. Grabbed a piece of jewelry that I wasn't using anymore, and I'm just going to wrap it around the top just to, again, give it that additional detail. Pop this on a stack of books, and again, it just adds another element to your shelf styling, and it can be done so affordably if you shop at the Dollar Tree. Faux potted plants from places like Pottery Barn can be really expensive. So I wanted to see exactly how much would it really cost to try to make something very similar. So I found this planter here. So at my Goodwill outlet, all of the glassware items are 50 cents per pound. I also found this fern garland, as well as these branch stems. So to start, I'm just going to take this planter here. So if you want to alter it in any way, now would be the time to do so. Because I found a fern garland and not stems, I just needed to remove those fern leaves there and attach them to the stems that I did find. Just going to mix up some cement, because when you're looking at the faux plants from Pottery Barn or even through the Hearth and Hand line, there is a cement layer at the bottom to keep the stems in place. Just mixing that until I get a pancake-like batter consistency, and then just cleaning off the excess. Again, we don't want this to look like a DIY project. We want this to look really nice and really finished as if it was made in a factory. Laying some tape down in order to keep the stems from falling over, and everything will stay nice and upright. Another thing you'll notice at the tops of these faux potted plants from these places like Pottery Barn and Target, they have almost like a faux dirt. So the closest thing I found was at Dollar Tree. You can find these small pebbles here. Just going to make those as small as they possibly can be to give that faux dirt effect. Of course, it's not identical, but for something that looks pretty similar and just about $5, I think it is a major savings if you're on a budget. I also really love to add wall vases when it's appropriate. So I ended up finding this picture frame here at the Dollar Tree. I'm just going to remove the frame section. I'm gonna save it, put it in my stash, might need it for another project in the future. And then I also found this ribbed planter here that's just $1.25. The one thing that I needed to do to this in order for it to be attached to the wall was just make some small holes on both the top and the bottom. So then that way this will be able to sit flush against the wall, but then also this planter will be able to sit inside of it. Totally optional, but I did decide to paint mine. Now, because I wanted mine to have a more antique brass look, I first like to go in with some brass spray paint, then I will go in with a metallic bronze spray paint, and then we're just going to finish it off with some antiquing wax that we're going to primarily focus on the top and the bottom of this planter here. Keep in mind the weight. This wire isn't that heavy despite being screwed into the wall, so I wouldn't put cement in a project like this one. Wall vases can be quite expensive, so the fact that this was just $2.50 is a major savings. So unless you've been living under a rock, I'm sure we all heard by this point about the Ralph Lauren aesthetic. The stocks just continue to rise in this area, and I get the appeal. It's that rustic Americana cabin vibe, but juxtaposed with a really polished, elevated, classy look. But not everybody has a Ralph Lauren budget. So at the Dollar Tree, if you want to give something that's maybe a little bit more Ralph Lauren inspired, I would start with one of these wooden crates. And I wouldn't just give it like this. I think taking an extra step to stain it or paint it with some watered down acrylic paint is a better option. Whenever you're painting something that has lots of slats like this, make sure you're doing the sides first. Working in small sections is also helpful, just to make sure that things aren't drying before the time you're able to get to that part. Also nice to add a label. Now, leather is all over the Ralph Lauren website. And while you might not find leather at the Dollar Tree, you will find this imitation leather that, in my opinion, looks as close as you can get without it actually being leather. So I wanted to just make a small leather label for the front of this crate, and later down the road, if the recipient has a label maker, they can put something on here, or it's just a decorative accent. just drilled 4 holes for the suede ribbon, so then that way everything can just be threaded through and tied around from the other side. With that rustic part complete, now it's just time to add that more polished and refined side of Ralph Lauren. So many beautiful options, some of them over $1,000 though, which I really don't think my husband would be very happy with me if I spent like $600 on one tray. I think if you're on a Dollar Tree budget, this is a really great option. I think it gives a more elevated look than you would expect from Dollar Tree for just $5. Just to again elevate it a little bit, I wanted to give some small finial feet. And if ever you want to do that with any piece from Dollar Tree, it doesn't have to be this tray. Just grab one of those chess games from the Dollar Tree and just cut your chess piece down. So it's basically just this small finial ball foot. Attached it with E6000 and then taped it off so that way I could spray paint the entire thing with some brass spray paint that I always keep in my stash. Now, you could stop here, or again, monogramming it gives it a more elevated feel, makes it feel a little bit more personal. So if you have a Cricut, this is super easy. You could do this a million and one ways. I really wanted to try this armor etch. So I just took a stencil that I thrifted and I'm just going to apply a pretty thick layer of this armor etch on, just removing any excess, waiting about 5 to 10 minutes and then rinsing it off with water. Now it's kind of hard to show you guys because this is a mirror tray, so every time I turned the tray up towards the camera, of course, I just saw the camera. So hopefully this gives you a better indication of how it looks. With our tray complete, now it's just time to add all of these other pieces in. And not everything has to be a DIY project. Some things are just ready to go as they are. I love this cable knit winter hat for just $3. If you are planning on gifting eyeglasses or sunglasses, putting them in a glass pouch or case is always a nice option. Another thing I wanted to add was a black and white photograph, and you could just leave it at that, get a frame from the Dollar Tree, but I wanted to make mine into an ornament, so I grabbed one of the smaller frames from the Dollar Tree, and we're just going to drill one small pilot hole in the middle through the top, so then that way we can add our hanger component. Grabbing an ornament hook from an ornament I'm not using this year, as well as some brass wire, add in your black and white picture, tie it off with some velvet ribbon, and for under $2 you can have a really beautiful sentimental ornament for the tree. I shared with you guys in a previous Dollar Tree video, these candles are a dead ringer for something you would find on Ralph Lauren's website, but for just $1.25. A good add-on to any gift related to a candle is to, of course, add a lighter or a match striker. This glass container from the Dollar Tree definitely looks like it should cost more than $1.25, and it has the perfect spacing for you to add the striker part on the side. So I just cut that part out of the box, also from the Dollar Tree, and attached it with glass. I like to use glass glue for the reason that it dries clear, it looks like it was always meant to be this way, and you just get a nice polished look in the end. Another item from the Dollar Tree that's definitely giving a more elevated look are these mugs here at just $1.50 now. You can add in a Starbucks gift card, or you can add in now something that is from Ralph Lauren. Grabbed this perfume from TJ Maxx, and again, it just really ties off that component of the gift. Other things that I recommend. These faux fur slides here definitely look like something you can find from Ralph Lauren or even just anywhere, and it would not be just $5. Add in a faux leather bound journal with a beautiful pen. For the wrapping, I think a lot of people associate plaid with Ralph Lauren. So if you're going to do that, I would recommend either just making a reusable gift bag like this one, and then after the fact, they can turn this into a mat for a Christmas photo, or into ornaments, or into a lumbar pillow, versus just giving them a gift bag that they will likely throw away or donate. Just fit that in there perfectly and then tape it in place. Add in some velvet ribbon that I had left over from last year. Now, of course, it's not as beautiful or elevated as actually buying things from Ralph Lauren, but not everybody can afford it, and you can still give a really beautiful, thoughtful gift this holiday season if you're on a Dollar Tree budget. I love these bowl planters. They just feel very weathered and aged, and you can create something super similar using molds from the Dollar Tree. So grab 2 of these bowls from their like catering party section. They're $1.25 still a piece. Make sure to spray either WD-40 or olive oil spray something, so then that way your cement mold can be released easily. Just gonna mix that up. This is just the leftover cement that I had from the fern project. And I'm just going to place one of these into another after placing the cement inside to create a cement bowl shape. To keep it in place, I did decide to just put something heavy in there that wasn't going to crack the plastic, but enough so to stabilize it. So I just used this can of wax. After about an hour or so, the quick setting cement just needed to be removed from that mold there. So I just did so very carefully. And if your molds don't crack, you can definitely just make several of these and place them all around your space and use them in different capacities. So the first thing I wanted to do was just smooth it out quite a bit because, again, I love that primitive look, but I still want it to feel refined. So just giving it a scuff sand with some 80 grit sandpaper, giving it an overall just more finished, smoother look. And then to distress it, I'm just going to take a damp paper towel with some antiquing wax, primarily focusing on both the top rim there as well as the base. Doing that just gives an overall realistic look. If you were to have a true found or reclaimed cement bowl, this is where those darkened areas would be. You can place those black river stones that you can also find at the Dollar Tree. Place those in here. You can get super close to the Pottery Barn look, or you can just use this as a catch-all bowl, use it as a planter. I also found this really sweet glazed planter from the thrift store that, again, just gives a uniqueness to your space. Now, I didn't like the faux florals that it came with, so I just decided to remove them. And again, not needing to reinvent the wheel, I can just use this in a different way. So I found these Cozy Place candles. Now, these are sold the exact same ones at Dollar General for $5, and they're still just $1.25 at Dollar Tree. So if you see this brand anywhere, their candles smell amazing. Make sure you grab these while they're in stock. So the container that these come with is absolutely fine, but we can give it a more elevated look by putting it in this planter instead. So I just like to do this on my stovetop, bring it to a boil, and then turn it to simmer until all of the wax is then melted. Unfortunately, I couldn't figure out how to release those wicks, so I ended up having to pull some from my stash, and I ended up doing 3 just because I feel that gives a more high-end look overall anyway. Trim your wicks down, and I think you have a really custom look on a budget. With all that being said, that really wraps it up for today, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments if you found something helpful or a project that you really liked that you might want to try, or maybe a DIY project that you've done from the Dollar Tree that you want to share. I hope that everybody has a safe and fantastic week, and I will see you back here next Sunday. Bye for now.